You're watching TelecomTV from Mobile World Congress 2016 from Barcelona. And I'm joined now by Phil McKinney, who is President and CEO of CableLabs. Phil, very good to see you again. First question, though, is what is CableLabs doing at a mobile event?
Well, CableLabs as an organization, we are the R&D and innovation lab for the cable industry on a global basis. And wireless is becoming critically important for the cable operators with both unlicensed work, Wi-Fi in the home, public Wi-Fi, but also many of our members are active in licensed spectrum, LTE providers in the countries they serve.
So what exactly does CableLabs do, and what services do you provide for your members?
Well, CableLabs, we look at long-range innovations. We're focused both on near-term stuff, but primarily 3 to 8 years out. So it's always what's coming next. So for our members today, for instance, we're focusing on next-generation Wi-Fi, Hotspot 2.0, and what is it that we can do to actually improve Wi-Fi so that the end customer has a much better experience in connecting, access, accessibility. And in the licensed spectrum work, it's really around helping them with their strategy work, economic modeling, looking at what the investment costs look like. We also do a lot of spectrum policy work with regulatory bodies, both in the US, Canada, Europe, Asia. So we actually work with regulatory bodies to look at how do we expand, make more spectrum available, and what's the best utilization of that spectrum.
So are your members more focused on unlicensed spectrum or licensed spectrum, or are they looking at a mix of both?
Well, it is a mix. It's all mixed together. So they have both the fact that cable has the leading broadband backbone provider as far as total reach around the world. Cable is the leading broadband provider. That provides great access into businesses and to homes, but customers want to carry their broadband with them when they walk outside the front door. So in this case, it's both public Wi-Fi, which turned out to be very popular, but also that's the quad play. Many of the operators want to have a license play. So both your cable, your video, your broadband at home, and your mobile all converge together. And to give you that kind of blended experience no matter what device you're in. So, our members include like Rogers in Canada, GCI, which is the leading provider in Alaska. Vodafone has bought Ono in Spain and bought Kabel Deutschland in Germany. Liberty Global has their mobile play. So many of our members are going out and either building networks or acquiring mobile providers. So it's all coming together as really one offering to the marketplace.
So what are the key areas that you're focusing on at the moment that require the most effort from you?
Well, one area that we're active in right now is around LTE and LTE unlicensed and the interference that LTE operating in the unlicensed band can have on other wireless services in the unlicensed band, like Wi-Fi. So we started this work 2 years ago, where we actually, it actually almost came about by a little bit of an accident in our lab, where we were running LTE. We were actually putting LTE over coax as a test. And in this particular test harness setup, we had LTE that was leaking out of the coax, and it was knocked the Wi-Fi out in the office. And we started looking at what the issues were, and then all of a sudden we heard about this work in LTE unlicensed. We're like, hold on here a second. We had this experience in our lab. Is this going to be an interference problem? And that started down a whole process. And for our members, some of our members provide LTE services. Many of them have Wi-Fi. And we want to find ways where we can take better advantage of that wireless spectrum, where we have to share it in the case of unlicensed.
So as the mobile industry starts its journey towards 5G, what about the work that CableLabs is doing? Do you feed into other standards bodies and agencies?
Well, for CableLabs, we participate in 31 standards bodies around the world today. So for instance, we're very involved with ETSI, we're on 3GPP, Wi-Fi Alliance, WBA, Open Daylight for SDN and NFV. We can go on MPEG. We have the chair now on MPEG. So for our involvement, it's about taking our work and actually contributing it into the standards bodies. We also have a program where vendors who work with CableLabs have access to the CableLabs patents royalty-free. So they can have access to the patents inside of CableLabs if they become what we call a contributor. And that's really to encourage the vendor community to leverage the work we do on behalf of either the cable industry, or in some cases, we actually work with and make it available outside of the cable industry.
So when we get to 2018 and 2020 and we start to see the first 5G commercial systems start to be introduced, what will be the role of your cable members?
Well, in some cases, some of our members have actually announced that they're going to go into spectrum auctions. So you could see some of our members go in and actually bid for spectrum in the countries that they operate in. And in some cases, they're looking at maybe being a backhaul provider for the 5G, because in the case of 5G, they're all going to be pretty much small cell deployments. And so in order to do small cell deployments, you've got to have access to broadband, typically out on strands or poles or wherever you're going to put it. And cable is the best provider because they've got the best network deployed on a geographically dispersed basis. So in some cases, you could see the cable industry being, playing a role in providing that backhaul in support of 5G. And in some cases, you could see some of our members actually deploying 5G.
As you said, you're doing a lot of work around wireless. I assume also that you're supporting that with work on cloud and areas such as virtualization of the network.
Oh yeah, from the standpoint of CableLabs, we look at really across the entire range of any technologies that could have an impact on the cable industry. So when we look 3 to 8 years out, it's everything from new access network technologies like the next generation of DOCSIS, which is the fundamental technology inside the cable plant. We just came out with 3.1, which gives you 10 gigabits over your existing cable plant. We have a lot of research in fiber, a lot of research in wireless. But even if you go higher up the stack, we also look at the applications. What's those things that are going to come onto the network that need that kind of capacity? So virtual reality is a big research area for us. We're looking at those kinds of experiences and what's going to be capacity demands that are going to put a lot of pressure onto the network. There's this race to get to gigabit. And the question I always get asked by the CEOs of the cable industry and the press in general is, great, you're delivering me 1 gig to my house. What am I going to do over 1 gig? What's the application that requires 1 gig? And so we spend a lot of time looking at those kinds of applications, experimenting with them, and actually in many cases inventing them to really see what that future is going to look like.
Now, you've had a lot of experience in the wireless industry. You've seen a lot of changes over the years that you've worked in this sector. What would you say are the main challenges as we move and try and realize the dream of 5G?
Well, when you look at the current transitions with 5G, we've all lived through it before, right? I built the AMPS networks in the late 80s, early 90s in the US. So this is kind of my show. I spent 30 years of my career in the wireless space. So these transitions are always challenging because there's always the unexpected. 5G's role, for instance, in IoT I think is very exciting. One of the challenges, though, in the IoT space is the lack of a security model built into the IoT. So one of the concerns that we look at in the IoT world is a consumer goes out, buys an IoT device, drops it on their home network. Consumers don't have any understanding of the security wrapped around that, and they potentially expose their entire network to all kinds of privacy issues. There was a recent press article around this search engine that allowed you to go in and search and find the back doors into the nanny cam, so you could actually watch kids sleeping in their cribs, those kinds of things. And it's kind of shocking. So one of the things that we've done is CableLabs manages the security for the cable network. So today that's 400 million PKI security keys CableLabs manages for every cable modem and every set-top box. And we've never had to do a key revoke in 12 years. We've had other industries now come to us to want to use the exact same security model. So we're actually working in both the IoT space, we're working in the smart grid, electric utility space. We just got engaged in healthcare to look at how do we secure things like your IV pumps, your kidney dialysis machines, because those don't have as much security as you would like to have either built into them. And so what we're seeing is the work that CableLabs has done historically, and of which 99.9% of the population have no knowledge of what CableLabs' role is. We're bringing that out and making that available to other industries because we think that that's really one of the foundational pieces that's got to be solved before we start really launching into this next generation.
So as well as building security into devices, we've also got to consider security from the outset as we design and architect new networks.
Well, exactly. It's not just the IoT devices. You have to have a security model that understands the devices attached to the network, and then you got to have the security model in the network. And the GSM, there's this whole question of SIM-based security versus certificate-based security. And to be quite honest, I think they're going to coexist. So there's going to be some changes in the 5G to understand how do you really blend the security models that understand kind of the historical GSM model, but also understand where the world's going with this certificate-based security, so that you can have basically a 5G experience across any device, in any mode, any means of access, not just the traditional SIM, dial as we normally have it on our handsets.
Phil McKinney, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.